Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we dive into one of the most chilling mysteries to ever haunt the annals of human history. In a world where shadows dance at midnight and whispers echo through the dense forests, there exists an event that stands as a testament to our own vulnerability in the face of fear. It was on February 27, 1959, when 5 Soviet students ventured deep into Russia's frigid north. They were not ordinary hikers. These young men had ambitions far beyond the confines of their textbooks and dorm rooms. Their destination was Dyatlov Pass, a secluded and uncharted territory known for its harsh winters and deadly cold. But something went terribly wrong from the very beginning. The group set out on foot that day with plans to complete an exploratory expedition before heading back home by nightfall. It didn't take them long to lose their way in the pitch black of night, navigating through a landscape cloaked in a thick blanket of fog and biting winds. And then, one by one, they started disappearing into the shadows. First came Alexander Korkov, the tallest member of the group who had taken charge at camp. Next was Igor Dyatlov, the student who'd been in charge of navigation. And with each passing moment, more lives were snatched from this earth. But that wasn't all. The deaths weren't just cold-related accidents or mishaps on a night hike gone wrong. Each victim showed signs of trauma, wounds inflicted by sharp objects but never observed during the expedition. They died in such a way that it felt like they were being hunted down. And here's where things get truly unsettling. The final member to succumb was Yekaterina Grigorieva. She was found face down, her hands bound behind her back. It wasn't just about survival. There seemed to be an organized effort to make their demise look like a series of tragic accidents that no one would believe. This is only the beginning, folks. What lies ahead will take us into realms where logic cannot explain the inexplicable. Join us next time as we unravel these chilling classified files, and perhaps, discover the truth behind the Dyatlov Pass incident. But this was only the beginning. Our story continues as we delve deeper into the classified Soviet files that have finally come to light after decades of secrecy. These documents, once hidden away in archives meant for national security and military operations, now reveal a landscape of suspicion and confusion. Among these files are eyewitness accounts from the expedition members themselves. They paint a picture of trepidation and fear as they recount their journey through the snow-covered mountains. The conditions were indeed harsh, but the documentation suggests something far more sinister was at play. For instance, one member recalls seeing strange figures lurking in the distance before any accidents occurred. Another mentioned hearing screams that no sound could ever reproduce. The investigators found inconsistencies everywhere. One theory was that these students were part of a covert military operation or an experiment gone awry. But even this couldn't fully explain all the evidence at hand. Their campsite showed signs of being meticulously cleaned and organized, as if someone wanted to cover their tracks before anyone else arrived. And then there are those disturbing injuries found on some victims, not typical frostbite or cold-related trauma. The most chilling part comes from a handwritten note that was discovered among the documents. They were not who they said they were. It's an ominous statement, one that sets alarm bells ringing for any seasoned investigator. How could anyone be sure about the identities of strangers in a foreign land? As investigators delved deeper into these files, new theories began to emerge like ripples on calm water, some more plausible than others. Some suggested supernatural forces at play or entities manipulating them from beyond what they could understand. Others posited that it was a form of natural selection, where only the fittest survived. But no matter how many theories were presented, there remained one undeniable fact: the survivors themselves never revealed any secrets about their experiences to investigators. They clung tightly to the belief that everything had happened because of the extreme conditions they encountered. The more these files unfolded, the clearer it became what lay underneath this mountain range was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Investigators discovered cryptic symbols and codes etched into rocks at various locations along their route. These were not markings from a casual expedition but rather some form of communication or warning left behind by whatever force was orchestrating this tragedy. As the investigators moved through these findings, what emerged next would shake even the most skeptical minds. It wasn't just about deciphering old documents and deciphering symbols. What they uncovered pointed towards activities that went far beyond human comprehension. The nature of their demise stretched from physical harm to something almost mystical, and it was all intertwined in a web of mystery that seemed designed specifically to confound. What investigators discovered next would shake even the most skeptical minds, leaving them with more questions than answers but also an inkling of understanding that there were forces at work here beyond anything they had ever encountered. It opened doors to possibilities once thought impossible, and it left us on the precipice of discovery, ready to uncover whatever secrets this mountain range might hold. As investigators delved deeper into the Soviet files, a fog of suspicion and unease settled over their work. The mounting evidence now included disturbing photographs taken by survivors during their final moments. One image showed clear signs of struggle, hands clawing at fabric, eyes half open in terror. The most unsettling piece of physical evidence emerged from the campsite itself. Investigators found remnants of what appeared to be makeshift shelters and scavenged materials hastily prepared for warmth. Beneath these structures were strange markings that seemed almost ritualistic, symbols that defied explanation. Some believed they might have been a form of communication, while others thought they indicated some form of sacrificial practice. As if the evidence wasn't enough to unsettle them, investigators discovered something else entirely chilling: remnants of human remains found near the edge of their campsite. These were not victims but rather individuals who had apparently tried to escape, only to be left behind as the rest succumbed to whatever force was at work here. The conditions were harsh, and survival appeared almost impossible under normal circumstances. The atmosphere grew darker with each new discovery. Investigators found layers upon layers of evidence that hinted towards a dark conspiracy beyond human comprehension. One document revealed entries from an anonymous notebook detailing strange occurrences and warnings given by characters described only as the Watchers. These entries spoke of a fate awaiting the expedition members, warning them of their impending doom if they dared to venture too far. In one section of the documents, there was even a handwritten message that seemed almost prophetic: "They will find nothing. But what lies hidden beneath shall consume all who seek it." This ominous phrase left investigators at odds, both excited by the potential discovery and terrified by the very idea that they might uncover something truly horrifying. As they continued their meticulous examination of every document, photograph, and physical artifact, the investigation seemed to be unraveling an entire system of deception. It wasn't just about a tragic accident, it was about a meticulously planned operation gone awry. And then they found something that no one was prepared for. In a remote corner of the campsite, investigators stumbled upon what appeared to be a small chamber. Inside this hidden room, there were remnants of tools and equipment designed specifically for extreme conditions, including specialized thermal suits, which seemed far too advanced for any known military operations at the time. What lay beyond these chambers was shrouded in darkness. Investigators ventured inside cautiously, each step echoing ominously through the narrow space. As they progressed deeper, the temperature dropped significantly. It felt colder than the surrounding environment could explain. The walls were adorned with more disturbing symbols and markings that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. In one particular chamber, investigators found a journal left behind by what appeared to be their captors, written in an almost incomprehensible script. This journal spoke of rituals meant to manipulate human minds, control bodies, and alter perceptions from reality itself. It was here where they discovered that the victims were not merely unfortunate casualties but rather unwitting participants in some form of biological experiment or occult ritual. And then they found something that no one was prepared for. In a remote corner of the campsite, investigators stumbled upon what appeared to be a small chamber. Inside this hidden room, there were remnants of tools and equipment designed specifically for extreme conditions, including specialized thermal suits, which seemed far too advanced for any known military operations at the time. What lay beyond these chambers was shrouded in darkness. Investigators ventured inside cautiously, each step echoing ominously through the narrow space. As they progressed deeper, the temperature dropped significantly. It felt colder than the surrounding environment could explain. The walls were adorned with more disturbing symbols and markings that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. In one particular chamber, investigators found a journal left behind by what appeared to be their captors, written in an almost incomprehensible script. This journal spoke of rituals meant to manipulate human minds, control bodies, and alter perceptions from reality itself. It was here where they discovered that the victims were not merely unfortunate casualties but rather unwitting participants in some form of biological experiment or occult ritual. This discovery left investigators on the brink of madness, each page revealing a deeper layer of horror and manipulation designed by forces beyond their understanding. The chilling realization dawned upon them: they had uncovered not just a tragic accident, but an elaborate scheme that aimed to control human life itself, using the expedition members as unwitting pawns. And then they found something that no one was prepared for. The initial report from Soviet authorities dismissed the incident as a group of hikers who accidentally fell and died in extreme cold conditions. They blamed alcohol intoxication among some members for their condition and suggested they were victims of a wild weather event that struck during their expedition. The official investigation provided no explanation for why these individuals would have been targeted or how such anomalies occurred. This theory was utterly inadequate, as it failed to account for the meticulous nature of the evidence found at the campsite, the strange symbols etched into makeshift shelters, the remnants of human remains, and most disturbingly, the presence of sophisticated equipment designed for extreme environments. The official report also ignored the chilling journal entries, leaving many experts convinced there was more to this story than met the eye. As investigators delved deeper, they uncovered a document that revealed inconsistencies with the initial explanation. This document indicated that some members of the expedition were in contact with an unknown entity or group while in the area and had received instructions prior to their departure. These instructions seemed to have led them astray from their intended path, suggesting premeditated involvement. The official explanations continued to ignore these anomalies, focusing instead on natural causes such as hypothermia, exposure, and environmental factors. Investigators found this wholly insufficient given the evidence unearthed, but the official narrative remained stubbornly unchallenged. The true nature of what transpired at Dyatlov Pass began to unravel when investigators stumbled upon yet another layer of documents detailing a covert operation by a shadowy organization. These records spoke of experiments involving human subjects in extreme environments, conditions that matched those of the Dyatlov expedition perfectly. The documents mentioned specific projects designed for psychological and physiological manipulation, including the use of hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and altered environmental stimuli to induce states of disorientation. Investigators learned that this organization had been involved in clandestine biological warfare studies during the Cold War era. They began to suspect a link between their findings at Dyatlov Pass and these classified experiments. The official explanation seemed ludicrous compared to the evidence pointing towards human experimentation or even bioterrorist activity. As investigators continued, they discovered a shocking truth: members of the expedition had been deliberately targeted for inclusion in this clandestine project. Their deaths were not coincidental accidents but carefully orchestrated sacrifices in the pursuit of scientific advancement at any cost. The official narrative failed to account for such systematic and planned human experimentation, leaving only questions unanswered. But the true horror revealed itself when they uncovered what appeared to be evidence of a genetic modification experiment involving the members. This shocking discovery challenged their understanding of bioterrorism yet left them even more puzzled about how these modifications could affect human physiology in extreme environments like those at Dyatlov Pass. Investigators became acutely aware that many of the official reports and explanations were deliberately obfuscated or outright fabricated to protect sensitive research projects. The official narrative served as a smokescreen for what they knew was going on but feared exposing. As they pieced together these fragments, they realized the full scope of human ingenuity pushed to its extreme limits in pursuit of knowledge at any cost. But the truth, as it turned out, was far worse than any theory. The official reports remained unshakable, but as investigators delved deeper into those classified Soviet files now released, they encountered a document that spoke directly to their fears. It detailed how members of the expedition had been subjected to a series of psychological experiments aimed at eroding their sense of reality and authority. These individuals were made to believe their own safety was compromised or even in jeopardy. One investigator found himself compelled to read through the journal entries again, driven by a need for clarity amidst the fog of uncertainty. As he did so, his stomach twisted into knots when he came across the final entry written by one of the members who had survived. In it, they described seeing what appeared to be apparitions or manifestations of otherworldly entities. "What no one realized until much later was the most chilling part of all," whispered an investigator as he paused in horror. The journal entries mentioned a series of rituals that were performed in front of their captors by some members. These rituals were designed to shift blame onto them and make it seem like they had willingly sacrificed themselves for others. The realization hit hard, shattering the veil of mystery with stark clarity. The survivors knew what happened, but they could not articulate it without risking further punishment or worse consequences. Their only escape from their tormentors was by ensuring no one else understood what truly transpired. As investigators grappled with this new revelation, they discovered more disturbing evidence: microscopic traces of a foreign substance on the bodies and clothing of some members. This residue matched known biological agents used in clandestine research projects. It became evident that these individuals had not merely stumbled upon an unknown entity but were caught up in a deliberate bioterror attack, one designed to strip them of their autonomy and knowledge. The official explanations now seemed laughable. The Soviet authorities' attempt at maintaining the fiction of accidents or extreme weather conditions faltered under the weight of multiple corroborating documents and evidence. They had either been deliberately misled about what occurred or allowed themselves to be complicit in concealing a larger, more sinister conspiracy beneath the surface. Investigators discovered an encrypted communication sent by a supposed member who was actually a covert operative. It detailed the infiltration plans and outlined how members would have been coerced into carrying out dangerous experiments for their captors. The operative had even been ordered to document these events, ensuring no witnesses or evidence were left behind that could expose their true nature. The horror intensified with each new piece of evidence unearthed. Investigators found themselves not just debunking the official narrative but unraveling a complex web of deceit and corruption that extended beyond the initial Dyatlov expedition. The truth emerged as they pieced together fragments from various files, revealing how this operation had likely been part of a larger scheme involving multiple expeditions across different regions. Investigators began to see their investigation in a new light, not just about an isolated incident at Dyatlov Pass but about broader systemic failures within both the Soviet and Western scientific communities. The cover-ups, fabrications, and deliberate obfuscation of evidence highlighted how far-reaching these conspiracies might have been, affecting multiple projects over decades. What no one realized until much later was the most chilling part of all: the realization that their initial understanding of what transpired at Dyatlov Pass was woefully inadequate. It wasn't just a group of hikers who fell victim to an accident in harsh conditions, it was a meticulously planned and executed experiment designed for extreme psychological, physiological, and biological manipulation. The investigators themselves were complicit or had been manipulated into maintaining the official narrative. As they continued their investigation, each piece of evidence added another layer to this horrifying puzzle. What started as a tale of accidental misadventure turned into an exploration of deep-seated corruption, covert operations, and human experimentation at its most extreme. The investigators now faced not just the ghosts of Dyatlov Pass but also their own complicity in perpetuating lies. The realization that they had been unwitting participants in a conspiracy shook them to their core. What no one realized until much later was how deeply this cover-up reached into the very fabric of scientific research and government operations, exposing a hidden world beneath the veneer of official narratives and controlled information dissemination. In the depths of their investigation, they found themselves at an impasse, unable to conclusively prove any one theory without contradicting evidence from other sources. The documents were always incomplete or contradicted each other in subtle ways. They never had a smoking gun that could definitively point to either human error or deliberate malfeasance. As the months turned into years, investigators continued their work, piecing together fragments of information and conducting independent experiments to confirm some findings while debunking others. Their conclusions were as much informed by circumstantial evidence and logical deduction as they were from what was provided in the classified files. The more they uncovered, the more it seemed that everything they thought they knew about Dyatlov Pass had been a facade. Finally, one investigator found a note written on an experimental notebook, dated just before the group went missing. It read, "The next step is to ensure no evidence remains of our presence here." And then there was always this piece of evidence, their final question: where were they all buried? Investigators debated endlessly over the best explanation for why and how they were killed. Some theorized a supernatural entity responsible for their deaths, while others posited biological or chemical attacks gone awry. The common thread in all these theories was that no one had ever come to find them. Their bodies never surfaced. The most chilling part of it all remained unanswered: where are the bodies? As investigators continued their inquiries and experiments into this forgotten expedition, they found themselves consumed by a relentless pursuit for answers. Each breakthrough only led to more questions and a deeper understanding of the complexity of human nature and the darker corners of scientific inquiry. In the end, what no one realized until much later was that Dyatlov Pass had been a microcosm of larger conspiracies hidden beneath layers of official silence and controlled narratives. What happened there reflected broader patterns of abuse, cover-ups, and manipulation in both the Soviet and Western world. As they stood over their maps and documents, trying to piece together this nightmare into something coherent, one investigator whispered a final question that hung heavy in the air. "And what about those who didn't die? Where are they?" The answer echoed through the room like an unseen specter: silence. The viewer was left with more than just unanswered questions. It was as if the very ground beneath them had shifted, revealing secrets too vast and sinister to be contained within any finite space. And that final thought lingered, chillingly clear in their minds long after they turned off the light for the night.